When people get hurt in an accident, do they have to hire a lawyer?
With a very small number of exceptions, people don't have to hire lawyers after they get involved in any accident. The real question is, should you hire a lawyer? Not every case really requires the help of a lawyer, and the real question is which cases actually do require the help of a lawyer. I own my own house. I feel comfortable doing some repairs, but there are a lot of things that I don't know enough about, and if I mess around with, I know I can cost myself thousands of dollars, like trying to fix my own plumbing. Mm-hmm. And people should be making the same kind of decisions about hiring a lawyer. Is this something that they feel comfortable and qualified to do? Is the issue that's involved one that can cost them thousands of dollars if things go wrong? You don't have to hire a lawyer, but
there are some times when you should.
There are actually only a handful of times where you really have to hire a lawyer.
Okay.
One of those is if there's a death case involved. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to represent the estate of somebody else if they're deceased. A lawyer has to do that. If somebody's under legal disability where there's a guardianship, for example, if somebody has advanced Alzheimer's or some type of mental illness or disability that keeps them from being able to represent their own interests. And the last time is as if it's a child who's involved and you're the parent. Outside of that, if you're an adult, you get to make those kind of decisions.
Okay. Why are people sometimes reluctant to hire a lawyer?
There are a whole slew of reasons why people are sometimes reluctant to hire a lawyer. People don't want to feel like they're sue happy. I can't tell you how many times I've answered a phone call from a potential client who starts by saying, well, I'm not the suing type. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, I don't think I want a client who is really eager to get involved in a lawsuit. But there are certainly times where getting a good legal help is the smart thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm certainly in favor of people making smart, grown-up kinds of decisions. Mm-hmm. Insurance companies have bought a lot of trust over the years. They're the good hands people. They're like a good neighbor. I mean, millions and millions of dollars have been spent by insurance companies kind of promoting trust. And truthfully, all insurance companies really sell you are promises. And so that's why trust is such an important thing for them to be selling. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you have people who are my professional personal injury lawyers who seem to do an absolutely amazing job of shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to creating trust amongst the public. Mm-hmm. We have people who are on TV waving fistfuls of cash. We're going to get you the quick settlement. It creates a horrible image of these are people who are in it for the quick buck. It creates a horrible image that quite honestly we're not very bright. Mm-hmm. The other thing that really causes people to be reluctant about hiring personal injury lawyers. It's hard to figure out who's any good. Mm-hmm. If you Google Chicago personal injury lawyer, you're going to get hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of results. If you go to the Yellow Pages, it'll seem like everybody does this line of work. The truth of the matter is it's very difficult, complex kind of work. Besides presenting your case against an insurance company that has their own set of lawyers who are experts at defending this, you also have all the medical issues that are involved, which really take a lot of training and a lot of expertise to kind of get your arms around. And you have to be able to present these in a smart, compelling kind of way to a jury that's not necessarily predisposed to buy what you're selling when it comes to presenting a case in front of a jury. It can seem like an overwhelming kind of decision to have to make.
So what kinds of questions should people be asking themselves when deciding whether they should hire a personal injury attorney?
The way I look at it is there are 5 basic questions that you need to be asking yourself to determine whether or not you should be hiring a personal injury lawyer. The first of these is, do I understand the legal framework that's involved for deciding my case? What are the things that I need to be able to prove? Sometimes it seems like it should be relatively simple, and when you get down to understanding what the actual legal requirements are, it's something that's either completely different or more complex than you might actually think. Mm-hmm. The second of these is, do you know what the procedures are for actually resolving the case? When you're in law school, there are certain classes that are really required, especially when you're a first year. One of these is civil procedure. And procedure is the rules. These are things that nobody is going to teach a layperson. The lawyers all know these because this is what we do day in, day out.
Right.
And it becomes kind of a trap for the unwary if you really don't know what you're doing when it comes to how do cases get resolved. Mm-hmm. Third question that I think people really need to ask themselves is, do they have the time, ability, and resources to devote to actually prosecuting the case, to attending court hearings? The lifeline for the kind of case that I do, on average in the Chicago area, is somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 years. Throughout the lifeline of the case, there's going to be times when you have to go to court for status hearings. There will be depositions and other things that will have to be done outside of court that are all part of working the case up. And if you don't have the time and the ability and the resources to devote to handling your case in the right way, then it's the kind of thing that you need to get help with. The fourth issue I tell people that they need to look at is, have you obtained your medical records? And do you understand the significance of what's in your medical records with regard to the legal issues in your case? Part of how a case gets evaluated by an insurance company is based on the nature and extent of your injury. And that's kind of spelled out in your medical record. You may have a conversation with your doctor, and your doctor may explain things, but the insurance company isn't a party to those discussions. So they're going to be looking at what's in your records, and they go through them very, very closely to try to find some way to point the finger elsewhere in terms of the kinds of injuries that you've got, spell out that there's some other cause for the injuries. For example, if you're involved in a car accident and you've hurt your lower back, one of the things that people from the insurance company are going to be doing is taking a look at your x-rays to see, do you have bone spurs in your low back? Because that's an indication that you have degenerative processes going on.
A pre-existing condition.
A pre-existing condition, exactly. And they're going to say that this points in a different direction than the accident as being the cause of the problems that you're talking about. If you don't get your medical records and you don't understand what's in them, it's not a fair fight, because the insurance company is going to have your medical records before they're ever going to discuss settling your case, and they're going to have a good handle on the meaning and the significance of what's in them. The fifth question I tell people that they need to ask themselves is, do you understand how a case is evaluated for fair value for a settlement? I think everybody in the end wants to be treated fairly. They'd like to settle their case. They'd like to settle it for a fair amount of money. And how cases are evaluated for settlement is something that's very important. And if you don't understand how those are evaluated, you're going to be spinning your wheels for a very, very long time.
What kinds of things go into assessing a fair value?
Well, the two most basic things are the question of liability. Whose fault is it? Insurance companies are only responsible for offering a settlement or paying a judgment if the person that they insure is actually responsible for the accident. The second thing is the nature and extent of the injuries. All things being equal, and things are never completely equal, but all things being equal, the more badly you're hurt, the more money there is in medical expenses, the more money there is in lost wages, the higher that fair settlement value is. But things are never equal, and no two cases are exactly alike. There aren't standard settlements for any one particular kind of case, but there is a process that people use in this particular area of law to evaluate cases for settlement, and it's not uniform. It's not done the same way at the insurance company as it's done in my office or another lawyer's office. But there are some generally understood concepts as to these are the things that we look at to try to evaluate cases, and these are things that are really born of years of experience of doing this kind of work.
This is Fighting for What's Right with attorney Barry Doyle. Feel free to subscribe to our channel, click like, and leave comments.